Hi everyone, we're coming to you live on Facebook. I'm Ashley Norden, Education Developer here at Blick Art Materials. We're really excited to bring you this super special encaustic wax painting demo. Encaustics are a historical art painting process, and we're going to bring it here to you today in the most traditional way possible with the heating plate, the wax bars, and the encaustic wax medium. We're going to be using R&F encaustic products, including the pigment sticks, the colors, and the brushes, along with the heating plate that has a thermometer set on top of it so that we can heat those paints up to 200 degrees. We're also going to be working on an ampersand encaustic board. This is a pre-primed, ready-to-use board right out of the packaging that is perfect for all of your hot wax encaustic products. So definitely check these out. That way you don't have to constantly rework your surface every time you want to make a piece. So we highly recommend this. This one has a nice cradle edge to it, so great for framing or just hanging right on the wall. Let's go ahead and dive right in. I want to remind everyone that we are doing a giveaway this evening, of course, for a free $100 Blicky gift card, and you can be eligible to win that gift card as long as you like this post, you like this page, and you follow us on Facebook. And don't forget to answer the prompt question in our chat this evening in order to be eligible to win that gift card, which is, what's your favorite moment in art history? We talked about how this is an art historical process, and we want to bring that into our presentation this evening and get you thinking about what are some of your favorite moments from art history. Was it when the Sistine Chapel was painted? Is it a favorite painting that you have by Rembrandt or a piece by Degas? Think about that art history moment and let us know in the chat what your thoughts are, and we'll be there answering questions along the way. So feel free to raise your hand and chime in at any point in time during the presentation, and we'll do our best to answer those questions for you. So let's go ahead and get started with our underpainting. I also want to tune you guys into some of the collage elements that we'll be using this evening. One of the processes with encaustic is to embed items such as paper, string, different elements that you can really embed in the wax. And as you build the layers of wax, you're going to be able to see through those layers like you do in this piece here to kind of create that visual poetry that we love to get out of encaustics. Think about how you can tell a story in your artwork and then apply that here with this process. We have some neat handwriting artwork, and then we also have a personal artwork. So something that you can do if you're out there, you're an artist and you're working and you're thinking about how you can bring your own artwork into your encaustic. I created this watercolor earlier this year. It's just a regular typical watercolor on watercolor paper, and I scanned this artwork and made a color copy, and then I've cut it out, and boom, I have something to work from in my piece. And I'm going to show you how we're going to use this artwork as a guide to create our painting. All right, so let's go ahead and dive in. We're going to start out by making an underpainting on this board using those R&F pigment sticks. And these are the oil-based sticks that we've been talking about. And this underpainting, this is a way to get that background color. It's going to start to look looser and look more lucid, rather, as we build the layers on top of it. So really, you don't have to be too precise in this part of the process. It's totally creative and up to you. I am using analogous colors, so I started with a blue and now I have a green. I'm not using colors like red, yellow, and blue that are going to get muddy, or else the surface might turn brown. And if that's what you're going for, that's totally fine, but I like a little pop of color as I'm working. I'm going to bring in this neutral off-white color to help fill in some of this space. The R&F sticks come in a variety, pigment sticks come in a variety of different colors that you can try out, and they're incredibly bright and beautiful, so definitely do that. I've got a blending stick here. This is a blender and dryer. So look at how creamy and blendable these pigment sticks have become just with a couple of layers of scribbling on this encaustic board. Perfect. A little bit of chunky there. Don't really want that. All right. Now that we've got this covered, let's go ahead and start applying our hot wax. This wax is meant to be heated up to 200 degrees. Definitely, when you're using hot wax, safety is a #1 concern. Make sure that you don't have any pets who are going to be nosing around your art supplies. Make sure that you're working in a well-ventilated area, and also make sure that you're wearing protective covering. If you want to wear a mask, use oven mitts, gloves, all of those items, wear an apron. I think those are all recommended in this process. Your paints are going to take maybe an hour to slowly work their way up to temperature, so get that hot plate started as soon as you are ready. And I have found that using the hot plate at just below medium temperature gets me up to about 200 degrees really nicely. And my paints are all nice and melted here. So I'm using a large bristle brush to apply this initial layer of wax. And what we're going to do, you're going to see the wax go down, and it might gently disturb some of the underpainting layer, but you don't have to worry too much about that. You're just going to keep working right over top of that and applying that wax while it's really nice and hot. Okay. Once you get that covered, we're going to want to fuse each layer with a heat gun. So it is more heat. Again, be cautious when you're using that. Don't touch the nozzle. Fusing the layer means that we are leveling it out. So I'm going to heat the wax until it's all one level, and then I'm going to apply my next layer. Okay, perfect. So not too long. Get that wax moving around and get it leveled. As a rule, you're going to want to apply up to 3 layers of wax every time you fuse, fusing each layer in between. Now I'm going to go ahead and start adding in these collage elements. This is a little bit of handwriting, and I'm going to take my hot wax, I'm going to just work right over it. Okay, and you want to kind of keep things warm and moving as you work. All right, let's go ahead and get this down. Working somewhat quickly, and you can see how the wax is making the paper a little more transparent as we're moving, okay? And that's really what you want. Now, let's fuse this layer. This is a really important step, so don't forget. Every time. Great. As you can see, we're going to continue to build these layers, and that's helping to level the wax. You want that wax on a very smooth, level surface, and you're going to see why as we continue to work this process. So let me go ahead and continue to place my collage elements where I want them. All right, now do the same thing here. Apply up to 3 layers of wax right over the top. This embeds the paper and makes sure it doesn't go anywhere, but also it's going to be your guide for where you're going to want your colors to go. We're going to continue with this process by carving and applying the encaustic paints so that we get that nice textured effect that we love about encaustic painting. All right, fuse this layer. Okay, so when you get that nice and heated, everything's getting to a level surface, you are going to notice that you're getting some dripping down on the sides. That's why we're using this butcher tray. Be careful not to touch anything that's hot while it's working, but it is a very helpful surface to work on when you are doing encaustics. Okay, so apply up to 3 layers of that wax and fuse between every layer that you apply. Once you do that, and I've worked ahead for us here, you should have something that looks like this. Look at this beautiful wax color. This is slightly less transparent than just using the encaustic medium alone because I've mixed it with the impasto medium, which is going to give you a little more texture, which some of us like. So this is really the first step into your process. The wax is probably still a little bit workable from when we were using it before. Now, before we step into this next part of the process, in which I will be using some sculpture tools, this is a pin tool, don't forget to check out our bundle page. All of the items that we're using here today are on the bundle page, including the R&F, as well as these sculpture tools and the heat gun that we're using. And when you combine all of these elements together, you can get some really incredible effects that you simply cannot achieve with typical oil and acrylic painting. So what I'm doing here is going back to our art history theme this evening. This is a sgraffito effect, which basically just means that I'm scratching into the surface. So I'm using a pin tool to go around the edge of this artwork that I've embedded in the wax. And there's a couple reasons for doing this. One is that you can use the pigment sticks and rub them onto the surface to work it into your sgraffito marks. And then you can wipe away the remainder of that oil paint stick and you'll be left with just a beautiful halo of color, which we're going to see here shortly. The other reason is we are eventually going to gouge out a little bit of this wax so that we can place our encaustic colors right into those areas. And it kind of gives it a textured bed to be worked into, as opposed to just putting the hot wax right on top of this beautiful, smooth, incredibly flat, fused wax layers that we've got here. All right, and I'm not going super deep. I'm just going in deep enough to where I can see that the mark has been made. So you don't need to dig. You know, you don't need to go all the way to the bottom of the board. You don't have to meet the bottom of the board, I should say. This gives you an opportunity to exact some detail in your artwork. Wax can be clunky if it's not dealt with in a certain way, and it would be a shame to miss an opportunity for some of this incredible detail. I'm even going to add in on my leaves here some of this drawing, and you can see how using your artwork as a guide is really going to help get you through this process. So let's see here. All right. Oh, forgot one little leaf here. Don't forget to enter our giveaway this evening. I want to remind everyone as we're watching here this encaustic process, I want to remind everyone that we're doing a $100 Blick e-gift card giveaway. And all you have to do to enter is like this post, like this page, and follow us on Facebook. And you'll be entered to win as long as you also respond to the prompt in our chat, which is, what's your favorite moment in art history? Such an interesting question as we're bringing in this historical process that is still widely used today, that is so unique from our typical painting processes that we just had to share it with you. Now, I've taken my R&F pigment stick and I've just rubbed it on here. Just enough to where I can fill in. You can use any color that you want. And then I don't want to make a huge mess. I just want to wipe away. I like a little bit of this color, and I can use it to kind of even conceal some of these collage elements, which will be less and less visible as we continue to work. So feel free to add that color and just wipe it into your painting there. And that cloudiness is, that lucid dreaminess is really what we love about encaustics. So keep working until you get the level of coverage that you really want from the pigment sticks. Now, some of this that's covering in here that maybe we do want it, maybe we don't. Some of that we're going to carve away. So don't spend all of your time working on that, okay? I think that is just perfect. I want to show you one more thing for your background that I think is just absolutely fascinating that you can fuse in. I'm taking just a little bit of this white encaustic paint, and I just want a little bit of that haziness in my painting. right, so it's just a little extra something that you can do while you're thinking about how to work out some of that background of your painting. Now, carving is so important to the encaustic process, and we're going to do that in a couple more ways here. I have some basic sculpture carving tools, just the wooden handle with a metal nib. And we're going to use these to gouge out some of these areas here so that we can go ahead and get started painting. And let's start up here with our leaves. And I'm just going to gently use this to scrape away some of the area where my elements are, my botanical elements. And part of what's helpful about the pigment stick portion of this process is that it it lets you know where you've removed that wax, right? So it's something to carve away to let you know how to kind of stay within the lines of your piece. And I'll still be, if I carved deep enough, I'll still be able to see some of those leaves veins that we liked so much before. So take a moment and you're just going to gently carve away that color. Get a paper towel and swipe it off. This is also going to help you to glean some of those colors that you want to match up from the artwork that you might be using that is embedded in your painting. All right. This is really looking good so far. And think about it, it's not so much of a time commitment as you might presume. I think that, because acrylic painting, other forms of painting have become so popular, things like encaustics, we tend to talk about less and less. And that can make a medium seem intimidating because we just simply don't know enough about it. But this process has been used century over century to make all kinds of incredible artwork. Take some time to look at what people are doing out there with modern encaustics, and I think you're really going to enjoy what you see. So now we've carved away some of this area where we want to start applying the color, and I'm really excited to share with you this process. So I'm using the R&F brushes here, and I've got my wax really perfectly right at 200, so you can see that they're really moving for me. This is where you really want to practice your safety precautions, and that's completely fine. I'm mixing up the paint. Sometimes it looks like there's a little bit of separation, so I'm just mixing that there, and I have this beautiful chartreuse. Let's go ahead and apply. And look at how easily it goes down in that area where we've carved away. And I know what you're thinking. Well, how do I get this to be as precise as the detail lines that I've just made? But you can carve away anything that you don't want. If you have taken the time to build up your wax layers to where you have those 3 fused layers, it's going to be really easy to work with this surface as you carve away. So remember how important those layers of fused clear wax are going to be as you're working. So let's keep applying. And another thing regarding the timeliness of the process is that as soon as you put the wax down, it's cooling. So you might want, you might be inclined to see that as something of a holdback, but really I think it makes the process that much more doable and beginner friendly. Look how easily and safely we can put these colors down. So really, it's time to break the barriers that we've put on ourselves when it comes to encaustic painting, and really open the door for how incredible and uplifting it can be, not just to learn something new, but to really master it with processes out there that professional artists are using today. I love this color right off the bar, but I'm going to show you some blending techniques that I think you're really going to love. So again, not limiting ourselves to just one approach to the color. We have a lot of options that we can rein in because it is an oil-based process. Now the bars, the R&F color bars that we're using are have a Damar resin component, and that's why you're going to want to work in a well-ventilated area. The odor is not incredibly offensive, but there is one, so if you have sensitivity to certain odors, that's just something to keep in mind. Certainly not enough to hold me back from wanting to dive right in. Now we have this beautiful chartreuse color, but that's not the only green that we can use. I have both a primary color set and an earth tone color set that I'm pulling from. There are multiple color palettes that you can use in the R&F line. So I have this beautiful greenish umber color that I'm going to bring in. And you can see how setting up that guide ahead of time did us a huge favor, because that's where the wax wants to go. That's where it wants to fall. Just a little bit. No, I think that's good for that part. Now, you can also do a little bit of shading. Okay? That's a little dark, but when I go back over it, look at how I can so easily shade my leaf, right? So combining these colors, one on top of the other, while they're still really nice and warm, it's going to give you that shading that you want, and we love it. We love it. Okay, I love it. So great, let's keep moving. This is absolutely perfect. Let's get a little bit of shading in our leaves. And maybe you're looking at a reference photo. Maybe you're kind of making it up, like I am a little bit here. I like that little bit of the imagination. I'm already using a guide, so I like a little bit that I can, you know, kind of make up along the way. A little goes a long way with this paint, as you can see. And once you get it working, you'll find that it's a lot easier to get those brush strokes than you might have thought initially. So definitely surprise yourself with the incredible ease and beauty of this project. Okay, perfect. I love this. All right, let's keep moving. I'm going to keep my brush in the palette because that keeps the wax moving. All right, as we're continuing to work, I'm going to go ahead and gouge out some of this white orange blossom. You know, it's a small area. We're going to work carefully, but we're not going to be intimidated that it is a smaller area. And while I'm doing this, go check out our bundle page. The link is right there in the post for you. And you can get a first-hand look at all of the products that we're using here today. And I think you're really going to enjoy what you find. And we're also doing a $100 Blick e-gift card giveaway. So who doesn't want $100 to spend toward their brand new R&F Encaustic set? You know, I had my own reservations about encaustics at first, but I gotta tell you, once I got started, now I can't put it down. So it looks like I have a new painting practice that I'm gonna be bringing into my studio. Okay, just apply in the areas that we've marked out while the wax is nice and hot. See how easy. You don't need to use a ton of pressure or a ton of paint even. Okay, we're getting those details really worked out here. And we love seeing details with texture. It's just incredibly charming. So to enter to finish my thought from earlier, to enter to win that $100 Blick E gift card, first, make sure that you like this post, you like us on Facebook, and that you're following us. And then let us know in the chat the response to our question prompt for the evening, which is, what's your favorite moment in art history? We're using a historical process here this evening, and we're absolutely loving every minute of it. Let us know, and you will be entered to win that gift card. Now, once you've got some of these details down, and we're going to get to the orange, I'm not going to leave it out, but take your Sgraffito tool and edge out these details and clean up these hairlines. And look how easily my orange blossom is looking more and more like an object. Okay, it doesn't look like a blob, which is so exciting because we're so worried about that when we step into new painting processes. We're so worried we're not going to get the imagery right. Let's move on to our orange blossom. And again, I'm just creating kind of a tooth layer here. Okay, and I'm taking away, I'm subtracting through the carving process. This is an additive and subtractive process in general, which often relates to sculpture. So if you think of these as sculptural paintings, you would be 100% accurate, which is what makes it so fascinating. We're going to gouge this out just enough, get that tooth that we want. And there might even be some details up here that we can capture. If it's your first time and details are intimidating, don't worry about it. But if you're a detail Annie like I tend to be, then I like getting those creases and crevices and all the little things that tell the story of the artwork. Now, I'm going to, I've kind of pre-mixed a little bit of this orange color. And I'm going to use that as a base, and then I'm going to use my red and yellow to fill in, and we're going to get a really nice blended orange color. And I think you're really going to find it interesting. So in a separate pan, I've got my orange going, and just put that down, and it just feels good to put that wax down on the board. And obviously our Encaustic board is the hero. Aside from our incredible colors and the versatility of the medium that we're using, look at how this board is holding up these layers. I have no crazing, cracking, no issue at all whatsoever. And that's really the dependability that you need in your products when you're doing a process, a heavy-duty painting process like this one. All right, now let's get some of that blending in here. I'm going to go ahead and use the same brush, or you can keep the brushes separate, and get some of that shading like we did with our leaves. Make that blending happen like you would with a painting that might not be encaustic. And I think you'll really enjoy the experience a lot more when you think about the possibilities rather than the challenges with a medium like this. I'm building up some really nice layers here. And look at this awesome texture. Texture, texture, texture for the win. Okay, I want to go all the way up to my edge here. Okay, I love this. Okay, I can add more shading, more yellow, but let's save some of that for our pigment stick work here in just a little bit. Let's hit some details, all right? Let's make this orange blossom come to life. I'm gonna take my yellow paint and I'm going to just dot it here. Okay, right there, perfect. Just a little bit, make sure that's safe there. All right, now what do we need to do still? Let's, at this point, we've got a lot of information here. Let's go ahead and refine some of this. Let's continue with our carving and mark making process to bring this closer to a finished piece. Let's go back into our leaves and remark. Okay, we have that muscle memory from what we did before. That's why the drawing process is so important. We don't just draw and walk away and then all of a sudden our painting is created. We continue to draw and draw and draw, and that really is what painting is all about. And these are just some texture marks that we love. Love, love, love the idea of carving right into my painting. And thinking about the possibilities that I can come up with in this process. Let's also take this, remember we talked about kind of just cleaning up our edges and making that look nice and refined. A little goes a long way with the encaustics. We didn't have to use a ton of paint to get to this point. In fact, we barely used any paint at all. All right, I'm gonna go back around because that helps to make my elements come forward. So using those marks that we made prior to getting to this step and leveraging them to help you finish the piece is really going to get you where you want to be. Okay, we only have a couple more steps left, and so I want to give you one more opportunity to remind you that we are doing a giveaway for a free $100 Blick e-gift card. That's a nice chunk of money that you can take over when you go and check out our bundle page and you see all the products that we're using here. Don't forget to like this post, like our page, and follow us on Facebook. And respond to our question prompt. Please let us know, what's your favorite moment in art history? What moment stands out to you? Is it a painting? Is it a building that was painted, like the Sistine Chapel? You know, let us know. We're super curious, and we'll get you entered to win that giveaway. I'm gonna get a little more paper towel. Now look, I'm taking the pigment sticks. See how quickly that layer of encaustic has dried. Super encaustic wax, super quickly. Now I can take my pigment sticks and I can continue to do this shading exercise all over. And what else can I can take some of my green here. I can do shading on the leaves, and I can work right over the wax. If you're doing encaustics, pairing the pigment sticks with the wax is such a solid aesthetic, and I think you're really going to enjoy it. And you know, keep experimenting, keep working on your practice. Now we have all these layers built up and it's looking really, really nice. Let's do one last thing. Another reason why you want these fused layers to come out nice and flat is because we can incorporate these wonderful stencils, any stencil that you like, into your painting for a little bit more of that blending that we talked about. How gorgeous is this? So I'm gonna keep using the pigment sticks, but now I'm gonna take a brush that I've been using for scumbling and dry brush. Really, this is a dry brush stencil technique. And I'm just gonna load this pigment stick up onto my brush. Of course, you can distribute the pigment stick onto a palette and you can pull your paint up right from there. And I'm just going to really lightly dry brush. It's not even perfect. It's just a little something to leave a little bit of a mark. Just a little something. See, I'm loving it. And it just helps to top off your artwork. It's just enough to really make things start to pop. All right, well, I am absolutely in love with this process and this artwork, and I have a feeling that you are too. And I hope that you've had a chance to enter for our giveaway. We're going to be announcing the winner in our chat here shortly at the close of our demo. Go check out the bundle page, check out all the projects and materials that we have on that page, and we would love to hear about it once you get a chance to dive in. I hope you enjoyed this demo, and we look forward to seeing you back with us for our next Facebook Live this Thursday at 4 p.m. We'll see you there.